doing it. Okay, yes. Look at us, professionals.
If we were professionals, we would have had this whole series done like months ago.
Well, we had to wait till we got done with all the movies.
Yeah, that's true. This is good timing. Well, we'll talk about it. Let's dive in because this is for our subscribers, and they're here to talk about Twin Peaks: The Return. And well, hello, welcome to Fire Shock with me, the Twin Peaks Watch Along podcast brought to you by Cinema Shock. I'm Gary Horn.
Hey, and I'm Justin Bishop. Welcome, everyone, to the long-awaited premiere episode of Fire Shock with me, The Return. That's what I'm calling it, because I think that's fun. Or Season 3, or whatever the hell you want to call it. This is where we're going to be starting our coverage of David Lynch and Mark Frost's third and final season of Twin Peaks, which aired on Showtime back in 2017. It's just me and you this time, though, Gary.
We 86'd Todd. David Lynch finished off Todd. Hodorowski couldn't do it, but David Lynch finally did.
David Lynch came in to finish the job that Jodorowsky couldn't quite close, you know? Todd 86'd himself, let's be real. He dipped right out right before we did Inland Empire. But that's okay. We're going to have fun with this. Let's be honest. You've seen the first 2 episodes of this already. Todd wouldn't have been having a good time.
Nope. No, he would not have.
He did himself a service, I think.
My sweet wife is still with it on Twin Peaks, but definitely even in this season, like in the first episode, she's just like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like, who is this person?
Well, it's gonna be fun to talk about. But for this episode, for the first episode of this new season, we're gonna do something a little bit different. Because when we started this whole project, our whole David Lynch series, which started way back in 2024, we devoted a main feed episode to the Twin Peaks pilot during that first David Lynch series, where we started with his short films and Eraserhead, went all the way through Wild at Heart on that series. But we did a whole episode just on the Twin Peaks pilot, and we gave it the exact same treatment that we give all of the feature films that we cover. And we did that for 2 reasons. First, you simply cannot tell the story of David Lynch without telling the story of Twin Peaks. It's sort of the sun that the rest of his filmography orbits around. It's his most well-known work. We knew at the time, we already knew that we were going to be doing a deep dive watch-along for our Cinema Shock Plus subscribers, where we would kind of go through every single episode of the show. But we couldn't just leave our main listeners in the dark. And so to ignore Twin Peaks during that series would have been malpractice. We just could not do that and do David Lynch justice. Second, that pilot really was a movie. It was feature length. It was 2 hours long. It was directed by Lynch. It fit the mold of what we do on the regular show. And it was filmed, and it was written and filmed and cast and everything just like a movie would be, and aired as a movie on television. So it kind of like deserved the same treatment that all of his movies did as well. But Twin Peaks: The Return is a different beast entirely. So as we're going to discuss, this was not produced like a television show, and it wasn't written by a room of writers. It wasn't handed off to a roster of journeyman directors. This was written as a single script, and it was shot as a single production. And it is, for all intents and purposes, an 18-hour film directed entirely by David Lynch. So our coverage of this had to change because the creation of Twin Peaks: The Return changed. So before we dive into the recaps of part 1 and 2, we just wanted to kind of set the table. We wanted to talk about how this thing actually got made, because the road to the return wasn't a straight line. It was a long, winding, and often treacherous journey. And to understand what we're watching, I think we really need to understand what it took to get it on screen. So if you're listening to this now, I'm going to assume that you've been along for the ride this whole time, that you've watched the first 2 seasons of Twin Peaks, whether you were re-watching it with us as we went through it on Fire Shock with me, or whether you were discovering it for the first time. And if you were paying attention to that journey, especially if you listened to Fire Shock with me for those first 2 seasons, then you know exactly how it all went wrong with Twin Peaks. But just to recap shortly, the central engine of Twin Peaks was always the murder of Laura Palmer. Lynch and Mark Frost intended for that mystery to go on forever, a sort of nucleus that all the other stories in town would orbit around. But network executives operate on a different frequency. And by the middle of season 2, ABC was, they were getting kind of frustrated. They wanted closure on this mystery. They essentially forced Lynch and Frost to solve the murder, to solve the mystery of who killed Laura Palmer. And the answer, as we know, was that Laura was killed by her father, Leland, who was possessed or at least manipulated by this otherworldly entity known as Bob.
I just will never get over that. Nothing says creative partnership like a network telling you, hey, this is a great job, auteurs, but let's go ahead and solve the whole mystery and lock in on how we're going to sell more detergent in the ad breaks and stuff.
Right, yeah. You know this thing that you built your entire show around? Let's just kick that to the curb and figure out something else. Like it makes no logical sense what they were thinking.
Especially knowing what you know now, that it's like now it's common sense that a show's central mystery can last for like seasons at a time.
Oh yeah.
You know,
exactly.
And that's a common thing that happens.
Very much so. And as we could probably predict, after that reveal, things kind of went to shit. Lynch lost interest in the show once the central mystery was gone. Frost moved on to other projects. He was directing a movie and things like that. Now, they were still overseeing the show, but largely from a distance, leaving writers like Harley Peyton and Robert Ingalls to try to find a new identity for a series that had just lost its hook. And this was a tough road. Ratings slipped. ABC started bouncing the show all over the schedule, which is the kiss of death for a serialized drama. And eventually, in 1991, the axe fell. Twin Peaks was canceled. And even though Lynch returned to direct that final mind-bending hour of the series, it was too late. Twin Peaks was dead. Now, there were attempts to resuscitate it over the years. We talked about this during our coverage of season 2. You know, Aaron Spelling, who was one of the producers of the show, briefly considered funding a third season for syndication, but the price tag was too high and he ended up backing out.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Makes me appreciate Aaron Spelling a little bit that he was going to come back and try to come to the rescue for Twin Peaks, but I was reading that it was something like $500,000 per or something like that
per episode.
Yeah,
which in 1991 is pretty pricey, especially for syndicated television.
Yeah. So even though he can be handy with a budget, I guess for a TV, they're not willing to play around with that.
And then just a few months after the Twin Peaks finale, Lynch got another shot, a feature film, Fire Walk with Me. Again, something we've discussed in great detail here on the show. But this was intended to be the first in a trilogy of films that would jump back and forth through time. And, you know, if you've seen Fire Walk with Me, then you know that the movie plays pretty loosey-goosey with time as it is.
I think if you've been following along with any of our Lynch stuff, from Lost Highway to Inland Empire, Lynch is always poised to give a pretty hearty "go fuck yourself" to any concept of time. So this is not surprising to me.
Not at all. I'm very curious as to what it would have looked like had he been able to make those. But, I mean, presumably the sequels would have answered that cliffhanger that haunted every fan after the end of season 2, which was the fate of Dale Cooper, who was trapped in the Black Lodge while his evil doppelganger roamed free in our world.
You know what's stupid, or not stupid, I don't want to say stupid. What's crazy to me is that knowing what we know about Fire Walk with Me, like I was reading an interview with Robert Ingalls, and he was saying that the second movie was a full pivot to like an origin story for Twin Peaks, and it was ostensibly going to be like taking place in, I think 1954 was the year, and it was going to focus on like the origins of the lodge entities.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that Lynch was definitely interested in that kind of topic, and there was some other stuff there too, and I'm trying not to spoil myself or anyone else. So but I was reading that a lot of the ideas that he later goes into, like some of the stuff is repurposed for use during this season.
Yeah. I do remember when we were talking about Fire Walk with Me, when I was researching that episode, that I read that there were some concepts for those follow-up films for Fire Walk with Me that were later used, or at least they might have been, I'm sure, over the course of 2.5 decades, changed a little bit, but their origins were in the Fire Walk with Me sequels, like these ideas that get reused for Twin Peaks: The Return. So maybe as we go on, we can figure out what those things were.
Yeah, it's just also the thought of it is kind of weird to me that, like, I feel like people, like he would have had a lot of people that forgave him if he went from Fire Walk with Me, and they're like, okay, that makes sense. We should have got more about Laura Palmer. Now can we go back to Dale and figure out what the fuck? Like, no, fuck yourself. We're not doing that. We're going to go even further back now.
So the whole second movie would have been like a flashback episode. And then maybe the third movie maybe by then they could have convinced Kyle MacLachlan to come back, because he was kind of hesitant with Fire Walk with Me, which is why he's in it so little. Maybe by the third one they could have convinced him to star in a Twin Peaks movie, which would have been more about Del Cooper. So, and maybe some of the ideas for that, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but maybe.
Well, I'm wondering if you'd even had the chance, like if the
Yeah.
first one hadn't already nipped it, that like the second one, people would have been like, "What the fuck, dude?
Yeah,
Come on."
yeah, exactly. You're just like pushing a rock uphill at that point. But I mean, clearly in 1992, Fire Walk with Me was not what audiences wanted. They wanted pie and coffee, and Lynch gave them trauma and incest, which is not a good substitute for pie and coffee.
Yes, not how you want to upgrade your meal at McDonald's, is it?
The humor and warmth were gone, replaced by the brutal, heartbreaking reality of Laura Palmer's final days. Now, today, we recognize it as a masterpiece. I think me and you both were very adamant about how much we loved Fire Walk with Me, especially having spent so much time with Laura Palmer and the people that were affected by her death over the course of the series. Then you watch Fire Walk with Me, and I really do think it's a masterpiece. But at the time, critics and audiences were pretty hostile towards it, and the movie flopped at the box office, and it took the plans for a trilogy down with it.
Yeah, I love Fire Walk with Me, and it's one of my favorites, period, of David Lynch. So, and especially as a fan of Twin Peaks now, I think I don't know. I think if you're a fan of Twin Peaks, you will love that movie now. I mean, it's not like love it like it's, I don't know, Avatar or something, but it's like you just appreciate that it adds more depth to the story that you're interested. But I can't help but feeling like, as I was thinking about Fire Walk with Me again for this, I was just like, man, I can just picture David Lynch like sitting next to studio heads at a premiere or something, and he's just like elbowing them in the side at the credits, and just like, huh? You like that shit? You like that Ray Wise possessed daddy dick? Huh? You want some more of that? Come on.
Now, after Fire Walk with Me kind of crashed and burned, there were other whispers of continuation, like a proposed spinoff where Audrey Horne goes to Hollywood, which eventually, of course, mutated into Mulholland Drive. We talked about that during that episode, but nothing really stuck.
Yeah, well, you have to. I always respect that the man, anytime he hits rejection, that's not like that's a bad idea. It's time to double down on the fuckery. Like,
yeah,
we got to go harder. That's what the problem was.
Yep.
So, except when it comes to his nemesis, Ronnie Rocky, just never worked out.
Never happened. And that Cal movie.
Yeah.
So for decades, whenever anyone asked David Lynch about returning to Twin Peaks, his answer was always the same: is that he said it's as dead as a doornail.
Yeah, that's his always polite way of saying fuck off.
Yeah, right. Stop asking me about Twin Peaks. Like I literally found a quote of him saying Twin Peaks was dead as a doornail, having to explain that to a journalist while promoting Mulholland Drive in 2001. So he's still getting asked stuff a decade after the show went off the air.
Oh, that's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, but I feel like that's the cross to bear for like most famous people. Like there's always like something like that, like especially like musicians with like their biggest song or something.
Well, it also speaks to the staying power of the show and how much people were still connecting to it even a decade later. And then there was one final fascinating almost before the revival. This one I didn't know anything about until I started researching this, Gary. This kind of like blew my mind, and I sort of wish that it existed in some form. But in 2007, a comic book artist named Matt Haley pitched a Twin Peaks graphic novel, and he envisioned it as an official season 3, picking up the story right where the show left off, kind of like how Joss Whedon continued Buffy the Vampire Slayer in comic book form. Like he did a whole comic that was like Buffy season 8, Buffy season 9. I think they went up to like season 10, but they were basically just additional seasons of the show just done as a comic book.
I never saw those because Meet Me at the Bronze or whatever it was called just died off. So.
And so did your Buffy fandom.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I'll do better with Twin Peaks.
That's a callback.
It is to a podcast that doesn't exist anymore that me and my wife used to do about Buffy the Vampire Slayer that we quit because Cinema Shock was taking up too much of my time. Now, this Twin Peaks graphic novel, this wasn't just fan fiction. Haley actually managed to get original series writer and producer Bob Ingalls on board, and Ingalls helped to write it. And they were actually going to use notes that they had saved for the unproduced third season back in the 90s, like notes that they had about what it could have been. And they even got the studio interested. Paramount Home Entertainment, they were planning on releasing this DVD box set called like the Complete Mystery or something like that. The Gold Box, which I had back in the day. It was the first way you could own Twin Peaks on anything other than like VHS, I think. And Paramount Home Entertainment agreed to package the graphic novel with that DVD box set. But there was a catch. Paramount would only do it, and in fact, Robert Ingalls would only do it with the express consent of both Mark Frost and David Lynch. Like, they were not going to do this without their blessing. Mark Frost gave the thumbs up. David Lynch vetoed it. He told Haley that he respected the effort. He's like, hey, I respect what you're doing here, but he simply didn't want to continue the story of Twin Peaks. In his mind, that door was shut.
Yeah, and I was reading a little bit more about this, and there's a little bit of nuance to that too. Even more is that, according to Haley, he didn't. It was this. I feel like this was in one interview I read with him, where he said it wasn't like a, just a complete shutdown. It was like he at least gave him kind of a, that might be something I'm interested in someday. Kind of an answer. So that I only bring that up because that feels like that's the first crack in his dead as a doornail armor he's put around this thing. So.
It might have been what started like getting the wheels spinning again. It could have been. We don't know that, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and so he's pretty protective of his stuff, so I can also see that. And he ends up like after a certain point he wants final cut on like what he's doing. So I feel like he looks at a graphic novel probably as something that's harder to control.
You gotta have an artist, and there's a lot of other factors involved there.
Yeah, and there's no sound design, which he said is like 50% of the film.
It's difficult, yeah. For someone like David Lynch.
Of course he vetoed it. Like, you can't add like a 40-minute radiator sound in the
you can't tell
on a PDF.
You can't tell your characters or your actors to walk slower. There's no way to control the pace of a graphic novel.
It's tougher to get it going if you've got like 40 pages of like black ink and like the word whooshing, like
ominous whooshing
in the corner. I did see that like one of the things from it too in one of those interviews he mentioned there was something. I feel like somebody mentioned somewhere there was like, could it be like a planet of creamed corn? Part of it with like Bob and Mike on it. I don't know if that's 100% true, but I did see that somewhere, and I was like, that feels plausible, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, what's not plausible in the world of Twin Peaks at this point? And Matt Haley produced some artwork for it. There's a little bit of it floating out there on the internet. Like, you can find some of his concept drawings for it, and it's good. I mean, it's just character design stuff, but it's like it's good character design. It looks good. So I'd be very curious to see what it would finally look like. I think Matt Haley also did a Twin Peaks or maybe a Fire Walk with Me poster using a similar art style that he sold a few years ago. I'll have to verify that, but I do think I came across that. But this does beg the question, what changed? Like, how do you go from Twin Peaks is dead as a doornail to an 18-hour cinematic event? And we might not ever know the exact moment that the spark returned. It could be, when, like we said, it could have been when he started talking about the graphic novel, got the wheels spinning. We don't know for sure. But if you know Lynch, then you know how he works. If you've been listening to this series on David Lynch movies that we've been doing, then you know how his brain works. He probably started fishing. He started maybe in the years between the graphic novel and the return, he started catching ideas, little fragments from that universe that he felt would finally meld with the world that he left behind.
Yeah. Now I will say that I did see something that said the missing pieces was also a huge part of this. That
working on that.
Yeah. That it was around, what was that? I think it was 2012, 2013, something like that.
Yeah, that's not right.
Yeah, so he gets brought back in to do the entire mystery or whatever thing,
Mm-hmm.
and there was something talking about like him sitting in the room for like months reviewing and editing the deleted scenes from Fire Walk with Me, that like he felt like something. I think this was in Room to Dream, or it was at least in an interview with Lynch somewhere that he said that like something about that, like watching those deleted scenes made the characters feel alive again. I think he actually, the words he used were like, it opened the channel back up.
Mm.
It seemed like he started to fall in love with it again. So,
yeah,
I don't, it does feel poetic that, yeah, just like old footage of Ray Wise crying is what brought it back around. So, somewhere there's a studio exec that deserves a Nobel Prize for locking him in a room long enough to hallucinate about Twin Peaks again, so he can make something. He doesn't come back for the fans. He doesn't come back for the money. He comes back because he gets high off the smell off his deleted farts. That's what it is.
Well, I mean, no matter where that spark started, it, like we said, there are a lot of different things that probably contributed to it, we know how David Lynch's mind works at this point. I mean, as much as anyone can know how David Lynch's mind works, like we've talked about how he discusses catching ideas and things like that. So at some point that started happening. The wheels started turning. What we do know for sure that's verified is this. In early 2012 or so, David Lynch and Mark Frost, they met for lunch at Musso and Frank Grill, which is one of David Lynch's favorite restaurants in Los Angeles. That's where, if you remember from our Wild at Heart episode, that's where him and Nicolas Cage became friends because they both went to lunch there regularly, and that's how he ended up getting cast in Wild at Heart. So that's one of his like go-to places in Los Angeles. And this is where Lynch and Frost started talking about doing Twin Peaks again.
Yeah, that Musso and Frank, everything I read about it was like it feels like you could see why it would be like holy ground for Lynch, because it's like the oldest restaurant in Hollywood. It's like untouched by time. Like it's like
still there too.
Yeah, the waiters like wear red jackets, and he, I think it was in Room to Dream again, like talks about the martini glasses are smaller, which is like the actual real size or the way they're supposed to be. And
nice.
Yeah, so he loves a place like that. And him and Mark Frost sat, I think, in the Charlie Chaplin booth was where they were.
We need to make a Cinema Shock trip to Los Angeles and visit some of these places. Like I walked by this restaurant when I was there because it's right off Hollywood Boulevard, but I didn't go into it. But I would love to, just to see the history of the place and know, like, you're sitting in the table where David Lynch and Mark Frost talked about Twin Peaks: The Return. Like,
that is,
like,
yeah. I think it has to be goosebumps thinking about that.
We should do it. Yeah, we should do it. Maybe if we get enough Cinema Shock Plus subscribers, they can pay for us to go to.
Right, we can afford to go.
Now, yeah, please. So this whole discussion of Twin Peaks was partially, at least, fueled by the timeline that they had established in the show itself. In the final episode of season 2 of Twin Peaks, Laura Palmer tells Cooper, "I'll see you in 25 years." Now, that wasn't just a line of dialogue anymore. It was a deadline. That baked-in time jump was quickly approaching, so they're like, should we do something with this? Now, according to Emily Stoffel, who is David Lynch's wife at the time, she's in Mulholland Drive. We talked all about how their relationship started during that. But according to her, Lynch and Frost, soon after this meeting, began secretly meeting at Lynch's studio, and they started to write. This is a process that went on, quote, for many years, according to her. Yeah,
and then it started, with like the studio meetings, but a lot of it too, because they lived in like different places. So they some of it was over Skype, I think they said too.
Yeah, eventually they moved to Skype because like David Lynch lives in like the Mulholland Drive area of Los Angeles, and Frost lived in Ojai, California, which is about a 2-hour drive. So it's just a little too far to like just go back and forth, every day. So they did a lot of it via Skype. Yeah.
Yeah, I only even bring that up because I saw like where Frost would talk about they were going back and forth on webcam, but the actual, like, he was doing the actual typing while David Lynch was just kind of smoking and dictating things and acting things out on camera. And
yeah, I think that's how most of David Lynch's screenplays got written. Like one of his assistants would type while he dictated, because I don't think he really was a fast typer. So now he would write longhand sometimes. Like I know Emily Stoffel talks about that a lot in Room to Dream, actually, talking about the production and the writing process of Twin Peaks: The Return, is that she didn't like him smoking in the house. So he would like go out on their like back deck and had this chair out there, and he would like curl up even in the wintertime, he'd have to, put a blanket over him, and he'd sit there with like a yellow notepad and longhand write a lot of ideas and things like that. But I think the actual screenplay, Mark Frost typed out the majority of it, at least initially.
Hey, imagine having the balls to tell David Lynch he can't smoke in his house.
I think that's why they eventually got divorced.
I believe it.
Honestly, like she says that in Room to Dream, like, because eventually he moved into this other part of the house or another building on their compound there, and he would set up like a writing area, and he would have a TV in there, and he would go in there. He would come in after filming The Return, because they would film all night. He's filming he's filming like 6 days a week, and he'd come in like 6 o'clock in the morning after a night shoot, and his wife and daughter were already because they had a daughter together. Remember Luna? And they would already be getting their day started while he was coming home to go to bed. And then he would say they set up this other like living area for him, basically in one of the other areas of the compound. And then eventually, like, he had a TV set up in there. He'd watch movies and smoke, and she would just come in there, and he was in there smoking whereas she wouldn't allow him to smoke in the rest of the house. And she actually says in Room to Dream, I think that's where I sort of realized, like, this is him at his happiest, like him being allowed to smoke inside. And I think the smoking is a big part of why our marriage didn't last. Like, she literally says that in the book. So it's not really a joke. It's like he was, he started living in another part of the house because he was allowed to smoke in there.
That is, I don't know how to feel about that.
Hey, you got to do what makes you happy, I guess.
On one hand, it's that so David, and then on the other, it's too bad. Yeah, especially because that leads to part of the reason he's not with us anymore.
I'd say the main reason he's not with us anymore was the smoking.
Yeah, okay. I was giving him a little bit of.
He had quit. He had quit for a while. He had quit smoking for a little while, and then one day for Christmas, he said, "All I want for Christmas is a cigarette." And he just picked up a cigarette and started smoking again. And then he was a smoker again for the rest of his life. Yep.
My wife's making me watch Friends again. And there's an episode where like Chandler has like Joey's trying to smoke or something. It's like a role, and he doesn't know how to smoke properly. So like Chandler is like a former smoker or whatever, it's like, no, you got to do it like this. And he takes like that one drag, and this, like, they just keep fighting him throughout the episode, like hiding and smoking cigarettes.
So by early 2014 or so, Lynch and Frost had completed enough of this script to start looking for financing for this series. And the script that they had written was not your standard television script. Instead of writing like episode by episode season of television, they wrote a massive plot document. That's what Mark Frost called it. That was several hundred pages long, covering the breadth of their vision for the new season. This wasn't like a Bible for a TV show like you normally have. It was a fucking phone book. It was like 400 or 500 pages long.
Yeah, Frost says they didn't like break up anything. Like, it was just this big file called The Return, and they would just kind of sit there and talk about it until they were tired of talking about it for the day. They would just keep going and then just pick up exactly where they left off the next day.
So they weren't worried about like this. Oh, this episode needs to end in a cliffhanger, or this episode needs to, and the show's not structured that way. And as you watch through the series, you will realize that the show is not structured that way. I mean, part one ends in sort of a little bit of a cliffhanger. There are like things here and there, but there are some that just kind of like, there's a scene and then it ends, and then the next episode picks up basically like it's the next scene, as if you could watch the whole 18 hours in a single sitting if you were someone who had the time and ability to do that.
You warned me about that a little bit for whatever reason we were talking about it, and I remember you telling me that he was like, oh, he filmed this whole thing before I even started looking into it. You were saying like he filmed it all as like one big thing, and so he splits it up in just random places sometimes or whatever. But then you finish that first episode and it ends in a way that you're like, no, that feels like that's supposed to be where this episode ends.
Well, except that like episode 1 didn't air that way originally. Where it cuts, and we'll talk about that in our next episode, but where it cuts off was not like it's that way on like the Blu-ray, and I think on Paramount Plus or wherever it is now as a single episode. But when it originally aired, it was a 2-hour block. It was a single continuous 2-hour episode. But what you're talking about, that moment does feel like a good cliffhanger,
Yeah, no, it feels great. And then, but then I was going to say, and then you get to the second episode, and the way the second episode ends, for me at this point in my David Lynch journey, I was like, this is good. This was a good ending too. But
Yeah.
I could see like that would being like, what? What is
Yeah.
that? Why?
Why?
Why here?
Yeah, why that? Well, so Frost, who, as we've discussed a lot over the course of Fire Shock with me, we know he's like a veteran of television, started on Hill Street Blues and all this stuff. He knew that what he and Lynch had written was way too adventurous for traditional network television. But he was also kind of wary of releasing it on a streamer like Netflix, knowing that they would want to dump it all at once instead of giving it room to breathe. He didn't want people to like binge this show necessarily. He wanted it to be a slow burn. So Frost convinced Lynch to take it to Showtime. And as it turned out, Showtime was more than willing to take the meeting. CEO at the time, David Nevins, had already heard rumblings that the two were thinking of reviving Twin Peaks. And he had actually reached out to Lynch's representatives to try to get them in the room before they even started pursuing Showtime.
Yeah, there's definitely a big difference going to Showtime. Like I forget what scene it was. I want to think. I know we're not talking about episode 1 yet, but there's like a certain point in there where they start dropping some F-bombs or something.
Yeah.
And my wife's like watching it, and she's like, whoa, yeah. Wait a minute, what's happening?
No,
here?
There's plenty of stuff in Twin Peaks, even in the very first episode, that would never have worked on network television. Like it would have to be
boobies.
There's some boobies, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's definitely plenty of stuff that would only work on something like Showtime or HBO. And one of the stories I read, I think it was from Mark Frost, said that they walked into this meeting with Showtime and they just brought this fucking, he called it a 500-page book, basically this 500-page script. I think it didn't end up being that much. Room to Dream says it was 340 pages or something like that. But they walk in with this giant thing, plop it on the desk of David Nevins, and this is like a Friday. And they tell this to Showtime. They're like, let us know by Monday. Like, what fucking balls you guys have got? Like just big old swinging balls walking in there like that. And it was the only meeting that they took. They didn't pitch it to a single other network. This was it, Showtime. Now, negotiations, it wasn't like overnight. Like Showtime was obviously interested, but negotiations went on for about 6 months. And then in October of 2014, David Lynch announced the news via Twitter. This is back before Twitter was a total cesspool because David Lynch was still on there. But he announced it saying in a tweet, "Dear Twitter friends," that's how he started all of his tweets. It's great. He says, "Dear Twitter friends, that gum you like is going to come back in style. Hashtag damn good coffee." And Mark Frost tweeted the exact same thing. He just copied and pasted it to his own. But I remember when this happened, Gary. I remember this being such a big fucking deal for Twin Peaks fans when David Lynch tweeted that.
Oh, yeah.
Twin Peaks fans collectively, like, our minds all exploded. We're like, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? Nobody thought this was ever going to happen. It was like, it's insane. It's like, I imagine it's kind of like what it felt like when George Lucas announced that there was going to be another Star Wars in 1999. I mean, I was old enough to remember that, but I wasn't as online as I am now. As I was in 2014, I remember being announced, but it wasn't like George Lucas went on Twitter and like nobody had a clue that a Star Wars was coming back, and all of a sudden he says that Star Wars. I was trying to.
You're trying to think of a phrase that would work.
I was trying to think of a funny way, like the gum you like is going to come back in style, but I couldn't think of a Star Wars adjacent one that worked for that. But you know what I'm saying.
George Lucas comes back on Twitter and is like, "Now this is pod racing."
We wouldn't get it because we hadn't seen the movie yet.
Right.
But anyway, Showtime officially announced the return of Twin Peaks not long after this, and they ordered 9 episodes for the series. By January of 2015, so this is like 2-3 months later, Lynch and Frost turned in a 334-page script to the network. That's according to Room to Dream. I think Frost, when he said 500 pages, was just like exaggerating a little because it sounds good, right? But when they turned in an actual like shooting script to Showtime, 334 pages, which is enormous. At that point, after they turned it in, Frost shifted. He kind of left the writing process. He shifted his focus to writing the book, The Secret History of Twin Peaks, a novel that would expand the lore of the series. And Lynch continued to work on the script. So it wasn't even done by the time they turned it in. Like Lynch kept working on it. As Lynch always does, he would also, improvise things during the shoot as he felt things out. But did you ever read, by the way, the Secret History of Twin Peaks?
No, I never did. I should have. I kind of wish I had.
You still can. I mean, you could read it alongside watching this series, I think. I mean, there are things that tie into the return a little bit. It's really good. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll get a kick out of how Mark Frost weaves the history of Twin Peaks into the history of like the United States and conspiracy theories and Project Blue Book and some of these things that were like hinted at in season 2 of Twin Peaks that will have a little bit of like there might be a little crossover here. I've only seen The Return once, so I honestly don't remember where it all crosses over. But I think to play it safe, it might be a good idea for you. And it's
well, now I got it on Audible.
Good. You're in
a credit. So there it is.
There you go.
It's done.
So Lynch, and he ended up becoming kind of frustrated with how negotiations with Showtime were going. They were kind of dragging on for a while. After 14 months of haggling, Showtime presented him with a budget for his show that he felt was incredibly inadequate. And this led Lynch to announce, again via Twitter, that he was pulling out of the project. So, psych, I am not doing this. That's what he said. He's like, Showtime's not giving me enough money to do what I want to do, so I'm out. Now, what Showtime seemed to have a hard time grasping from everything that I've read is that what was in Lynch's head when he was conceiving the new season of Twin Peaks wasn't your typical episodic television. This was a feature film to him, and that's how he was approaching it. Lynch wanted a feature film crew there on set every day. That includes like lightning machines. That includes standby painters to touch up the sets in real time, special effects technicians. He wanted them on the set just like you would in a movie. That's not generally how TV works. Like, you don't bring in these guys just in case like you would on a movie. Lynch wanting more money, this wasn't Lynch wanting a bigger salary for himself. His own salary on this was pretty small. He actually took a salary cut so that he could get this made the way he wanted it made. This was about him having the resources to put the vision that was in his mind on the screen in a way that he felt did it justice. And I think that's very admirable to say, like, if you don't give me the money to do this the right way, then I'm not going to do it at all.
Yeah, why bother, really? I mean, after all this time, like, and you know that the buzz is there. Like, why would you? I don't know. For him, it can't be worth it to not get to do it the way you want to do it after he's been denying everything for so long.
Yeah, exactly. He has no like obligation to do this. Now, by this time, when he pulled out, several actors from the original show had already agreed to be a part of the project. And Lynch had the difficult task of calling them to let them know that he was out, but that the project might still go forward without him because, you know, they'd already signed on with Showtime. And the cast, these cast members, many of whom had really made their careers on the series, like they were known because they were on Twin Peaks. They couldn't fathom working on this show without Lynch at the helm. So Machen Amick, who played Shelley on the show, she organized a video campaign with Dana Ashbrook, Cheryl Lee, Sherilyn Finn, Kimmy Robertson, Peggy Lipton, James Marshall, Gary Hirschberger, Wendy Roby, Catherine Coulson, and Al Strobel, all filming testimonials on Lynch's behalf.
Now, you can find this online. I found it on YouTube and watched
the videos.
It. Yeah. And so like the campaign is called like Twin Peaks without David Lynch is like, and the like Sherilyn Finn's is like eyes without brows. And Machen Amick is like a waitress without a uniform. And there's I forget.
They're all like specific to their characters.
Yeah, or like a cherry without a pie or something like that. You know. But one thing I read about it too, though, I think this was like, I don't know if this is true or not. Somebody said the rumor was that David Lynch actually worked with Machen Amick to like kind of directed how the lighting should look and stuff for some people or whatever.
Nice, yeah.
And, so like maybe he's like in the background kind of orchestrating this thing.
I haven't seen those, so I'm gonna go look them up when we're done here. Now, the issue with this whole thing between Showtime and David Lynch was, as it often is, lawyers. The fucking lawyers on Showtime's side of things. They were the issue here. They were negotiating this like it was any old TV show. Lynch had made it clear to everyone at Showtime that he saw this as a movie, and he couldn't tell them how many episodes that he needed to tell his story. He'd be like, it could be 13, it might be more. You know, remember, because they had originally greenlit it at 9 episodes, but he's like, that's not enough. They say, well, how many episodes is it? I don't know. Could be 13, could be 15. I don't know. To the lawyers at Showtime, this came across as indecision. They interpreted it as a demand for an episodic budget 13 times over. If he's making 13 episodes, he wants this much per episode. But that's not what Lynch was asking for. He didn't want like a rate per hour. He wanted a budget for the whole canvas, however big that canvas turned out to be.
It's interesting because like you want to judge studio execs sometimes, but I can't help but see their side of it a little bit on some of this. Like when he comes in and you're like, all right, so 9 episodes. He's like, nope, gonna need 13. Maybe. I don't know. Might be 15.
Yeah.
We'll see. And you're like, oh, come on. Like,
Well,
give
I
me
mean,
something here.
Yeah, I totally get it from their point of view to an extent. What he's trying to do here, there's not a precedent for it. Like nobody's ever done a TV show where they're like, just give me an amount for all of it, and we'll see how many episodes that ends up being. So that's essentially what he's asking for, and that wasn't communicated to the lawyers, or they were not understanding it, or whatever. So David Nevins, the CEO of Showtime, ends up having to come to Lynch's house to meet with him to kind of hash this all out. And Lynch kept telling him it's more than 9 episodes, but he wouldn't commit to a specific episode count. And Nevins, understandably, like to your point, would not just give Lynch a blank check. Like he needed to know how much money they were going to spend. So eventually Lynch tells him, figure out what you can spend, and I'll figure out if I can make what I want to make for that amount. So that's what ends up happening. Showtime budgeted the whole thing, the entire series, basically gave Lynch said they gave him a box of money, is how he described it. I don't think that's literal, although it would be cool.
It would be interesting. Just a box of cash.
Yeah. But they basically told him, here's the money, make as many hours as you feel that you need. There's no episode limit. Whatever you can make with this amount of money, you can split that up however you want, which is like, it's never been, I don't know if it's been done since. Like, that's a fascinating way to make a television show.
Right.
Now, reports that I found suggested that box of money contained roughly $40 to $45 million. Now, that sounds like a lot of cash until you do the math. Because if you spread that out over 18 hours, that breaks down to about $2.5 million an hour. To put that in perspective, Game of Thrones, which was airing at this time, they were spending easily 5 or 6 times that amount per episode. Or look at Stranger Things, which is relevant right now as we're recording this, the final season's airing. It reportedly cost $30 million an episode.
Insane.
By that standard, David Lynch was effectively making an 18-hour blockbuster on an indie budget.
Yeah, that's crazy. I was even looking at like it said that the return ends up it shoots in like 140 days, which is I didn't know much about this, but it was saying that was a pretty insane pace for 18 hours of stuff. Like it's like roughly like 8 minutes of screen time per day.
Which is wild.
We were saying for comparison, like an HBO drama shoots like 2 to 3 minutes of screen time a day. Basically.
Yeah. They're flying through it. So this amount of money, like we said, it's $45 million sounds like a lot for a TV show, but one episode of Stranger Things cost 2/3 that amount for one episode, 1 hour, right? So this was plenty of money for David Lynch. He was back on board. He signed on, and the ball was rolling. So as we've learned while we've been working our way through all of Lynch's projects, this guy loves to collaborate with the same people over and over, and Twin Peaks Season 3 was no exception. Now, he had hoped to bring his old friend Jack Fisk on as the production designer, but Fisk was just coming off The Revenant, actually, the Leonardo DiCaprio movie. So he just couldn't do it. He was just too busy. So he recommended his art director, Ruth DeJong, for the job. Dwayne Dunham returned as Lynch's editor. Of course, Angelo Badalamenti did the music, and Johanna Ray and Krista Husar handled the casting.
It's kind of nice after all this time, like seeing all the names return back. Jack Fisk feels like a big blow because those guys are like best friends and collaborators since like back in the 60s, technically. So,
yeah, they went to high school together, basically. Although they didn't work together until, what was it, Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive?
Yeah, didn't he help with the Eraserhead Baby or something back in the day, though?
No, he played the man. He's in Eraserhead.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he was the man in the
guy, the man in the planet who pulls the levers. Yeah.
So
he was there, but he wasn't officially credited on it or anything.
Yeah. Now, I did read that Ruth DeJong was pretty good. Like she, basically ends up like living with Lynch for a little while, just like driving around, like just scouting locations and stuff, just feeling the place out. So she seems
Mm.
like real dedicated to it from everything I saw about her.
Yeah, and of course, Johanna Ray had been David Lynch's casting director since like at least Blue Velvet, maybe earlier than that. I'd have to go look, but she was like his go-to.
Yeah, yeah. We've talked about her more than any other casting director, I imagine.
No, and now when I watch movies and I see her name pop up a lot, and it blows my mind like how many movies that I love that she's done the casting on. Like I watched something like a couple nights ago. It might have been, what are the last couple movies I watched? I watched Royal Tenenbaums and I watched The Long Kiss Goodnight. So it might have been one of those two.
Wow.
I also watched Curtains. I don't think it was Curtains. So I've got to say that one was probably not it. But I did see a lot of people from Black Christmas in Curtains, so a lot of connections there. But yeah, so she's just like kind of a legendary casting director. Of course, she had also cast the original Twin Peaks, so it makes total sense to bring her back.
Oh yeah.
But the casting for The Return was an enormous undertaking because this show features more than 200 speaking parts.
That's the crazy part, is even if you haven't seen it, if you just, and I did this, if you go to like IMDb it and you just like scroll through the cast, because you're like, oh, I wonder if this person's coming back. But then you start looking at the names.
Yeah.
And I did this for Jennifer, and I think this was like the thing that brought her back even more than anything, is I'm like, this person's in it, this person's in it, this person's in it. You know, and
if
she's
Todd were here doing his Star Trek thing, he would have a field day probably with a cast this size.
Right. Yeah. It just will blow your mind, like how many people are in this movie and or in the show, and just the names that you recognize.
Yeah. The first and most crucial piece of casting, of course, was Kyle MacLachlan. Lynch and Frost had actually quietly approached him back in 2012 when they first started working on the script, because he's sort of integral to everything they're doing here. So if he wasn't willing to come back, they would have kind of been screwed or had to go in a completely different direction. And he didn't have any qualms about it, like he did back when Lynch was planning Fire Walk with Me. Because remember, at that time, he was worried about being typecast. By 2017, he had done all kinds of stuff way outside of the realm of Twin Peaks, like, Sex and the City and like all kinds of stuff. So he's Portlandia might have already been by this time. Yeah, by 2017, definitely. Yeah. So he's done all kinds of stuff that to where he wasn't always only going to be known as Dale Cooper, or maybe with age, he had just accepted the fact that, hey, like, people know me as Dale Cooper. I'm still getting work that's nothing. I'm not playing. I haven't had to play FBI agents my entire career. So I'm fine just being known as Dale Cooper. I don't know where his mind went with that, but whatever it was, like, he signed on to The Return without a second thought. He immediately was like, yes, I am in.
That's good. He's had some cool roles. Like, I know him from other stuff now.
Yeah,
but
Showgirls.
Yeah, well, it's hard to forget that one. And, I just know he's a person I know that I've seen before in other things, and
Right.
But there's just nothing bigger than Agent Dale Cooper. Like, that's he'll just, I don't feel like that's like such a terrible weight to bear. You know.
Yeah, but this is also with almost 3 decades of hindsight that he's making this decision. So
yeah, he knows he's not broke, and just having to just pick up bit parts in Law and Order.
Yeah. And all in all, something like 27 alumni of the original series returned to the show. I mean, some of them in very small roles, but some of these folks had continued performing over the years, but there were others like Everett McGill, who plays Big Ed. He had retired from acting completely. He had been living off the grid in Arizona since 1999, and nobody had a number for him. Nobody knew how to reach this guy. So in August of 2014, while they're preparing to do The Return, Lynch did the most direct thing possible. He went on Twitter and he tweeted out to his followers, "Dare to dream? Does anyone know how to contact Everett McGill?" And it worked. And they found him, and Big Ed came out of retirement.
That's not a joke. I was looking this up, and he had like no agent, no manager, no public footprint whatsoever. And this just like brought out the internet sleuths, and supposedly like a reporter finally tracked him down by literally like cold calling landlines around the area that they thought he was in or something.
Yeah, and they ended up like finding the number to this house that he helped to like maintain. Like, he was like a caretaker for this house, but it wasn't his like actual like where he lived. He happened to, did you see this story?
I don't know if I saw the exact same story or not.
This is one that Everett McGill told in one of the things I was reading, where he happened to it was a house that he might have owned it, but it wasn't his like primary residence. So he was like there taking care of the property, and the phone happened to ring while he was there. And he doesn't always even answer the phone if it rings, because nobody ever really calls there because he doesn't live there. But he happened to answer it this time, and it was David Lynch on the other end. so they sat and talked for like, they caught up and everything, like, hey, how's it going? How you been? You know, and they talked for like an hour or so, and David Lynch tells him he's working on Twin Peaks and invites him to come along. And Everett McGill also, like, really, even though he'd been retired for like 15, 16 years at this point, he also kind of signed on without a second thought. He's like, yeah, for you, David, I'll do it. And David Lynch was like, hey, is this a good number to call you back at? He's like, no, it is not. This is the worst number. He gave him another number that was better to reach him at.
It feels like a horror movie. Like, like he just like the phone rings and you pick it up, and instead of like Ghostface, it's David Lynch.
David Lynch.
Just, you're like, grease up your hair, Ed. It's time to come back. Like normally in the real world, like doxing somebody is bad, but if David Lynch does it, it's whimsical or something.
Yeah, well, hey, at least they didn't like publish his address on the internet for everyone to know.
Right. I guess that's true.
It's basically David Lynch just outsourced a private investigator through Twitter. Yeah. That's all it was. And then, of course, you've got several actors who had been a part of the Twin Peaks world, whether the show or the movie, like Frank Silva, who played Bob, David Bowie, Don S. Davis. They had all passed away in the years since. And others who appeared in The Return passed away shortly after the shoot wrapped, lending a heavy sense of finality to their appearances in the show.
So I did not know that Bob or that Silva had passed away.
He had passed away years earlier. I think he was sick.
I honestly thought he was going to show back up in the series, and now you've ruined it for me. But.
Nope. Spoiler: he's not here. I mean, he does appear in like flashback.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, Frank Silva died in 1995. So only a couple years after Fire Walk with Me, actually.
Yeah, well, I know I read, like Catherine Coulson and Miguel Ferrer, which, we'll see. But they were both terminally ill during filming. And like Coulson was literally, like I said, on like oxygen support at the time, like between takes and stuff.
But there are tons. I mean, like I mentioned, there's like 200 speaking roles in this. So there's lots of other actors that are in this series as well. Some of whom had appeared in other David Lynch projects that weren't Twin Peaks. Some of who had never acted at all. A handful who you might be surprised to see show up in Twin Peaks. Now, and I'm not going to spoil any of them here because I think it'll be a lot more fun if we discover them as they pop up over the course of the season. You already spoiled yourself, Gary, but we're not going to spoil it for our listeners.
Okay. It's interesting. It's like, I don't know how big of a role any of these people are going to have. But it was exciting to me. Like, I was just like, wow, I really want to see this and see what they do. For all I know, they've got like 5 minutes and then they're gone. But
yeah, I mean, and many of them do.
Yeah.
So filming on Twin Peaks: The Return, or Twin Peaks Season 3, what did we want to call it? I mean, Showtime called it Twin Peaks: The Return, but David Lynch and Mark Frost never liked that because they felt like it signaled that it was like a reboot or something, or a remake. They didn't like it being called The Return. That was a Showtime thing. They always just considered it Twin Peaks Season 3. But I think saying Twin Peaks: The Return, because that's what all the marketing and everything else says, might make it a little more clear for our listeners. I mean, you should know what we're talking about. But
well, when you go look it up on something like Wikipedia or whatever, it like wants Season 3 to be the terminology.
It does, but on like IMDb, it's a completely separate entry on IMDb.
It is.
And Twin Peaks than the first two seasons.
Weird.
Yeah. Well, whatever we want to call it, filming on Twin Peaks: The Return Season 3 began in September of 2015, and as you mentioned earlier, Gary, it lasted 140 days. So Lynch kind of shrouded this whole production in a cloak of absolute secrecy, with the exception of Kyle MacLachlan, who he was kind of the only one who knew the full scope of what they were going to be doing. The actors arrived on set knowing nothing more than their own lines. They didn't get full scripts. They just got the pages for the day for themselves.
I don't feel like that's like a big revelation. I feel like most of the actors just knew their own lines in any David Lynch thing. They're just like, I'm just doing my job, man. I have
whatever
no
you say.
Here.
Whatever you say, bud.
But yeah, I was reading about how like secretive they were, and that's kind of fun. Again, not that I feel like it matters that much for the David Lynch production, but okay. And
there are some revelations and things that happened during The Return that you would not want to leak out onto the internet. for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I will learn as they happen. But yeah, they did apparently go through a lot. Like I saw that they called it like Rancho Rosa was the name that it operated under
When it was
or something.
when it was in like what was the Star Wars one that they called? It had a fake name too, Blue something. The Star Wars fans are going to be mad at
Blue
me. Not
Harvest, was
Blue
that what it
Harvest,
was?
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that Rancho Rosa is a reference to something, but I guess we'll see. But yeah, they had like NDAs on everybody, even like the
Yeah.
background extras. I think had like
Yeah.
NDAs and stuff, and so and if you like whispered the words Dale Cooper too close to the set, like a trap door opened and you fell into a vat of cream corn, and it was just terrible.
Well, once the camera started rolling, the production moved with a speed that is almost unheard of for something this size. They filmed the entire 18-hour season in less than 5 months. Now, to put that in perspective, a standard Hollywood blockbuster might take that long or even longer to shoot, like, 2 hours of material. As we've alluded to, they didn't shoot this like a TV show. They shot it as a continuous feature film. They didn't break for episodes. They just shot the script from page 1 to page 500 or whatever it ended up being by that time. In fact, the process was so streamlined that Lynch reportedly didn't watch any footage during the shoot. He just trusted his editor, Dwayne Dunham, to assemble the dailies while he focused entirely on directing. He wouldn't see the actual footage until the 140-day marathon was over. Now, a great example of this efficiency is in The Roadhouse. Over the course of this season, we'll see about 24 musical performances on the stage of the Roadhouse. It's kind of a recurring thing through the series. Now, you would think that would take weeks to coordinate, but in reality, they booked this place called the Women's Club of South Pasadena. They turned it into the Roadhouse. They filmed all of the bands in an incredibly compressed window. Some reports say it was done in just a few days. I think Room to Dream said it was all done in a day, which I don't think is logistically possible, but whatever it was, like they filmed them all together back to back to back, all of these bands, and they just rotated the audience members to create variety.
How cool would it have been to have been one of the audience members there?
I know. Yeah.
Like if you were just like rotating in and out for like 9 Inch Nails or something.
Well, don't spoil who's going to be in it, Gary.
Son of a bitch. I feel like you said that on one episode.
I might have, but it's a fun kind of recurring thing that I love about The Return. It's a weird thing that has nothing to do with the original Twin Peaks. It's just that David Lynch likes filming musical performances. I mean, we've seen that all through all of his movies. So why not, if you've got an 18-hour movie, why not film 18 to 24 musical performances for it? Because you can.
No, I've only seen the first 2 episodes as of the time we're recording this, and already there's been one that I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah,
and,
it's very cool.
And it reminded me of a song I haven't heard in forever that I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to put this back in the rotation. So
it's good. It's good. So it wasn't until they got into the editing room that Lynch and Dunham took this massive, continuous chunk of story and began carving it into the 18 parts that we know today.
One of the things I did want to mention too, just with the filming part, I didn't hear you mention this, but they ditched like heavy cameras for this. Okay, so you may know what this means, but it doesn't mean anything to me, so I'm not a nerd. But
you're talking about the type of cameras they use? What are they using, like Reds or something?
Well, it just said, in one of the things I was reading, that it was an American cinematographer. They were saying they had ditched traditional heavy cinema cameras for the Ari Amira camera.
Yeah, it's a digital camera.
Yeah, and it's usually used for documentaries. So I was reading about how like it's a very lightweight camera that they use that's like shoulder mounted, and so like Peter Deming could like light sets for like 360-degree movement. So
cool.
Yeah, so they didn't have to like cut and reset lights for like every new angle that they were doing. Basically,
well, that probably helped them move as fast as they did too. You know?
Yeah, it just said basically the actors were able to just kind of exist in a space, and the camera just kind of follows them, and so it makes it's trying to achieve this, like they're saying, like a visceral, like unpolished, like look to the way that it's filmed.
Well, this feels like an evolution of what David Lynch was doing on Inland Empire, you know, where he was able to set up things so quickly and move so quickly because he had less limitations with those lightweight cameras and things like that. So he's using basically skills that he learned on Inland Empire, using much better cameras, still digital cameras though, so you can still move really fast and not have to wait on resetting the film and all that stuff, reloading the cameras. But he's using tools that or skills that he learned on Inland Empire to help make such a massive show in such a quick amount of time, so he's actually like he learned from his experience on that, and so he's like, hey, on Inland Empire I could just shoot whenever, wherever, throw some lights up and we're good. So on this, we need to make it look more polished than we did on Inland Empire. So let's go ahead and light the entire set where we can shoot anything at any time, and we won't be held down by the limitations of, all right, we got to film it from this angle. We gotta stop for an hour and move all these lights around and all this. Like, why deal with that bullshit when you can just set it all up at the beginning and set yourself up for success?
Yeah, that's kind of a point I was wanting to get to too, just to mention, is that it does seem like this is another example of him being able to use a new skill he's learned, basically. And so, like, even in the editing process, like I was reading that, we talked about the film shot for 140 days, but they were editing for like over a year, I think, doing this thing. So, and going back to something we've kind of already discussed, but one of the things I was reading in interviews was that, that the episode breaks weren't like a planned thing. They were just, David Lynch said they were, quote, found. So they would watch the footage and then just simply decide, okay, this feels like where this feeling stops,
Right. And yet they still manage to, like, they have to get them win that hour time slot too. At this,
well, I was kind of thinking about that. I was like, how does that work? Like, so the feeling stops here. Okay, cut. So it's like, I could see why, we're probably going to see some episodes end abruptly or like hang on a scene or something that you're like, wow, this is a weird place to just ease out. But just like like a 5 minutes of this thing, and it's all dictated by the feeling of what's going on. And it just feels very anti-Netflix. Like, Netflix algorithms tell you exactly where to put like certain things to like keep people binging the episode. And Lynch is just like, okay, cut here.
Yeah. And I, like I said, I have not rewatched this since it originally aired, but I do recall having that feeling at the end of some episodes where it was like, wow, that was an interesting way to end that, or that was a weird note to end that on. Because at the time, like, I wasn't binging it; I was watching it week to week as it came out. It was like a Sunday. I think it was on Sunday nights. It was like a Sunday night ritual for me where we would watch this on Showtime. I had a Showtime subscription just so I could watch Twin Peaks: The Return.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people did. I was going to talk about that, but I was kind of wondering, like, are all episodes going to like have like the same length, or is it just like, hey, Dave, this episode's only 42 minutes, and he's like, well, I did just find this 4 minutes of a guy sweeping, so add that on and print it.
Well, there are, I don't know if this was the case at the time, but now you watch TV shows, even on Netflix, and you might have an episode of, like, let's say Stranger Things for an easy example, that's 42 minutes long. Then you might have another one that's an hour and 15 minutes long, just depending on how, because they don't have the limitations of like, we have to start it at this time. Now, Showtime's a little differently because it is linear television, at least the way it was going at the time. Now, if this were made now, it would probably be just straight to streaming, right? Straight to Paramount Plus or whatever. But at the time, there was still sort of this model of, we've got a streaming service, Showtime Now or whatever it was at the time. And then we've also got linear television where this is airing at 9:00 on Sunday nights. And it's got to end by 10:00 because that's when the next thing is scheduled to go on. But now you don't have to worry about that at all, because it's like people are going to just stop it whenever they want.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, nowadays it doesn't matter at all.
So finally, after years of silence and rumors and stop and start again from David Lynch, negotiations, all this bullshit, the show was ready to show audiences. And Twin Peaks: The Return had its world premiere on May 19th, 2017 at the theater at Ace Hotel in Los Angeles. But the real splash came a few days later when Lynch took the first 2 hours to the Cannes Film Festival. And the reaction at Cannes was electric. Now, the French, we've talked about this, but the French have always loved Lynch more than Americans do. I mean, his last several films, I think from Lost Highway up through Inland Empire, were largely financed by French studios. These French audiences at Cannes gave Twin Peaks: The Return a 5-minute standing ovation that left David Lynch in tears. And then on May 21st, 2017, just a couple of days later, the show finally hit Showtime. And they didn't just drop the pilot. I mentioned this earlier, but they aired parts 1 and 2 back to back as a single continuous 2-hour block, like a 2-hour premiere, just like the original Twin Peaks pilot had been. And then they immediately made parts 3 and 4 available on their streaming platform, which was a smart move at the time when a lot of networks didn't have their own streaming services yet. This is before like Peacock and Paramount Plus and all that stuff. But they're like, hey, if you subscribe to Showtime now, you can also go ahead and watch parts 3 and 4. Pretty smart. It was a strategy that was really designed to hook people, or maybe just to overwhelm them, because as audiences quickly realized, this was not the cozy Twin Peaks of 1990. This was something much colder, slower, and infinitely more abstract. That water cooler effect that Frost had wanted, I mean, he got it. Absolutely. People were talking about this show, but instead of asking who killed Laura Palmer, people were asking, what the hell am I watching?
The whole thing, from everything I was reading, like saved that quarter for Showtime. Just for the record, like the premiere drove the highest number of single day signups for the app.
I was one of them, so I believe.
Yeah, well, that's why I was saying I wanted to mention that, because when you said that, I was like, it sounds like a lot of people did that. So, because I think they mentioned like the live TV ratings were a little soft, like it wasn't like a huge boost or anything, but it kind of was one of the things that helped show like the audience was migrating like that.
Yeah.
The streaming like was huge. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like he didn't just break up like how a narrative plays out or something. He's driving streaming. Maybe it's David Lynch's fault that we're dealing with the streaming wars.
It might be a little bit.
Millions of people are like putting in their credit card information to watch a dude stare at a box for 20 minutes. So this is good. Like you have Netflix and chill, and David Lynch created Showtime and disassociate.
Hey, you know what? There is a Netflix and chill moment in the first episode of
that is a good point. Yeah.
With a couple people on a couch watching a box, and then things get hot and heavy.
Holy shit. David Lynch, you bastard.
The question you might be asking yourself as a listener of Fire Shock with me is, why did we wait so long to cover The Return? Like, why didn't we just cover it right after we did season 2 and Fire Walk with Me? Why didn't we go straight into The Return from there? And it's because if we had jumped straight from 1992 to 2017, we would have been watching this show with the wrong eyes. When you turn on Twin Peaks: The Return, you are not watching a show made by the guy who gave us Blue Velvet or Wild at Heart. You're watching a work by a man who spent 25 years dismantling his own storytelling machinery. This season of television was created by the David Lynch who fractured narrative in Lost Highway, the Lynch who perfected dream logic in Mulholland Drive, and maybe most importantly, the Lynch who descended into the digital nightmare that was Inland Empire. And I felt like we couldn't properly discuss The Return without first discussing Inland Empire. That film was sort of like, it was the Rubicon. That was the moment when Lynch stopped caring about cinema as a delivery system for plot and started treating it as a delivery system for pure consciousness. And that, I think, is the energy that he brings to The Return.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about this earlier, but I mean, it's worth noting again that, I mean, well, it's actually, I was going to mention like him having to work on Inland Empire again. I was going to say like, it's actually, we talked about for Inland Empire, I think that like he was pretty satisfied doing like painting and musing.
Yeah,
I can't talk. Painting and music during his.
He was musing as well.
Musing.
There's a lot of musing going on.
But like he almost wasn't even worried about coming back to film, it seemed like.
He was happy he was scratching that creative itch without making movies. So it wasn't like a huge priority for him.
Yeah, but then it was like he came back for Inland Empire and did that thing, and that broke him out of this like he realized there was another way to do this almost, it seems like. And then that was exactly the kind of thing that helps lead to something like this that like teaches him that there's a way to get this done too for what somebody's willing to pay for it. And so, it's just interesting that like maybe Twin Peaks: The Return never happens if it's not for like an Inland Empire.
Right. Yeah. I kind of believe that that's the case.
He's filming this like a I mean, it's a multi-million-dollar Showtime show, but like it's still in a lot of ways is like he's still doing it like the Inland Empire, like it feels like a student film or
Yeah.
something, you know.
Yeah.
It's just it's interesting that you could take that. What was so weird about Inland Empire, and now like it was already weird for like cinema, and now you're like, now I could also put this on a major network.
Yeah. And also like at this point, David Lynch was such a cultural giant, just like in pop culture in general, that Showtime knew that there would be built-in hype for this show. I mean, and they're still capitalizing on it. I mean, you can still watch it on Paramount Plus. There is still a Twin Peaks shop on the Paramount website that's still putting out new products. There's like Twin Peaks Christmas stuff that came out this year. That they just put out in the Paramount store, so they're still making money off of this. So it was a sound investment for them, for it to basically fund David Lynch's 18-hour art film. So I do think that for those of you who have not seen Twin Peaks: The Return yet, and that includes Gary, although you've seen the first couple of episodes now, so you know a little bit what to expect. But for those of you who have never watched this, maybe you watched through all of Twin Peaks back in the day, or you watched it with us when alongside us on Fire Shock with me, and you loved it, and you loved like the world that he built in that original series. I want to set the table for you right now. Drop all of your expectations. Just throw them out. Because if you want pie and coffee and quirky locals, you are in the wrong place. If you are hoping for a cozy, nostalgic return to the Great Northern, you are going to be heartbroken. This is not the Twin Peaks of old. It's not even close. We're going to spend long passages of this show with people we do not know in places we have never been, thousands of miles from the Douglas firs. But if there is one truth that connects the original series to the return, it's this. The original Twin Peaks changed television because it refused to look like anything else out there. And the return honors that legacy by kind of refusing to look like Twin Peaks. And I think if you watch it with those eyes, then you're going to get a lot more out of it, because this ain't your granny's Twin Peaks. This is something else.
But if you're worried, because you at least get the soundtrack.
And you'll see characters you recognize.
There is still some quirkiness about it.
Oh, there absolutely is some quirkiness about it. You do get some of that. It's just in smaller doses with a lot of like existential dread in between.
Well, yeah, I was gonna mention that, like, because as much as we've talked about the Inland Empire connection, I feel like it looks better than Inland Empire. Like it looks
like visually,
like it looks better. But there is something about the way it looks that is like a darker, like you're definitely on the other side of something. Like this is not the same Twin Peaks, like what you're talking about, but it's so there's like a unease going on, and but they will still slip in some I think pretty funny moments throughout, but like it just there's sort of steady uneasiness that's happening.
Yeah, there is still definitely some humor here. It's just it's a little bit overall a different feeling, a darker feeling. But yeah, I mean, David Lynch has a great sense of humor, and he will always slip in moments of levity, even in his darkest. Maybe not in Inland Empire. I don't know. There was a lot of levity in that one, but I'm like sitting here trying to think if there was something. Maybe the locomotion scene, sort of. Maybe, I'm sure there's something in there. Oh, Harry Dean Stanton asking for money. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, so there you go. But anyway, I think that's it for this like intro episode, Gary. Unless you have anything to say about your personal expectations as someone who's never seen The Return before. Like, what did you think going in? Like going into this series? We've talked enough about David Lynch over the last year or two that your expectations were probably a little bit skewed because you've seen him like evolve.
Well, I think it helps you brace for it a little bit, but I will say that like a couple of things, like IMDbing the thing, you get some like screenshots of the show, and I think even from the screenshots I noticed way early on that it looks different. Like something is different about just visually the
Yeah.
show just is filmed different. And
Yeah.
so I think I was ready for that part, but I don't know. I think I still was worried about the tone of it because that Twin Peaks tone is not in Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive or
Right.
Inland Empire
Yeah.
or that stuff.
No.
So you're not getting that. And so I'm like, is he coming back to what Twin Peaks was like? And he's not, but it's still there. Like under it all, there is still some of the Twin Peaks stuff. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like I did have hopes that it would still feel like Twin Peaks. And I may be making this up in my head, but even I'm not trying to spoil anything, and it's not a plot point, but like even for the music, I mentioned the music. I feel like I'm pretty sure you don't get that for a little while. Like the first episode is going to start you at a weird spot out of the gate.
Oh, you mean like the iconic like the theme song?
The theme song of Twin Peaks.
I mean, well, you get it at the beginning.
You're getting welcomed into Twin Peaks, and
sure.
I think in that first episode, it doesn't give you that like right away.
No, there's a cold open first.
Yeah. So and it puts you in a weird spot, and it's already like, okay, well, we're in the weird place, and so I think you're a little worried.
Some expectations a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it kind of made me like, okay, it's just gonna be all weird all the time, like right now. But it finally like eased me in a little bit. I don't know, for whatever reason, Badalamente's score was very important to me. I'm like, you at least gotta have the music.
Oh yeah, I told you that was on my Apple Music replay for the year. Was my number one listened to song.
Right. Yeah. You should.
The Twin Peaks theme song. It's like a comfort song for me now. It was my most played song of 2025.
It just felt like it feels
David
like
Lynch was my number 2 listened to artist as a musical artist. David Lynch. What is wrong with me?
Yeah, that is
Badalamenti was in my top 5. 9 Inch Nails were my number 1, but also Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross were my number 4. So he took 2 slots.
I listened to some scores.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of musical scores.
But yeah, I don't know. For some reason, that was a huge part of it for me. So, I guess I'm saying all of this to say to anybody getting ready to go into it, if you haven't started it already, just give it a minute. Like, it's going to feel weird. It is a little jarring at first if you're only thinking about the first 2 seasons of Twin Peaks.
Mm-hmm.
And but it'll get there to where you start to it feels weird, but it still feels like home. Like it's just you're in a different place. Like it's like
when you return to your hometown after 25 years away. Like some things are some things feel a little bit different, but there are still some things that you recognize.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Yeah. Well, that's it for this episode. On our next episode of Fire Shock with Me, we will be discussing parts 1 and 2 of Twin Peaks: The Return. We're going to recap them in full, talk about our thoughts and where we think things are going to be going forward. As always on this show, that we're not going to spoil anything. So when you listen to the next episode, we will only discuss parts 1 and 2. Gary hasn't even watched past those, so he can't spoil anything, and I'm not going to spoil anything. So this is made for whether you're a longtime listener or excuse me, a longtime viewer of Twin Peaks, and maybe you've never seen The Return, or maybe you've only seen it once, like me, or maybe you're rewatching it for the 50th time. We want to walk our way through it, but not spoil it for people who are experiencing it for the first time. So they will be spoiler free, but we will spoil the episodes we're talking about. Like, we'll spoil the shit out of episodes 1 and 2, but we're not going to talk about episodes 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 or any of that until we get to those episodes. So you can feel safe that we're not going to spoil anything. So
we would never.
We wouldn't dare. Well, I think that's it for this episode, Gary, of Fire Shock with Me. It's glad to be back, or I'm glad to be back. It's good to be back. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, same. And I'm excited. I'm excited to dig into this. And I can tell you at least this much, that after the first 2 episodes, I'm excited to keep going. So if you haven't seen it yet, get ready. It's a ride, but I think if you come along this far, you're going to be in. It's fun. So far.
The hardest thing for me is going to be waiting to watch the episodes so that we can record in between.
Yeah. I definitely wanted to keep going, but
I want to watch them all, but we're being good so we don't spoil people.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Gary, let our listeners know where you can be found on the internet in case they want to follow your ass.
Ooh, I'm at This Is Gary Horn on all the things.
And I am at Justin_Bishop. The show is cinema_shock or at cinemashock.net. cinemashock.net/plus to join CinemaShock Plus if you're not already a member, because that is where all of our episodes of Twin Peaks Fire Shock with Me will be available. Fire Shock with Me is going to be exclusive to CinemaShock Plus subscribers. So if you're not a subscriber, because this is going to be on the main feed. Did I tell you that, Gary? This is going out to everyone.
Oh, this one
is going out to everyone because
okay, cool.
Because we want to entice you. We want to make you join CinemaShock Plus so you can join us on this journey, because it's going to be really fun. We're excited about it, and we want as many of you along for the ride as we can. So if you are listening to this and you are not already a member of CinemaShock Plus, you can get Fire Shock with Me, including the first 2 seasons of Twin Peaks and the upcoming 3rd season that we're covering for just $5 a month. You get it all. And plus extended episodes of all of our other David Lynch stuff, all kinds of other bonus content that we're doing, all kinds of stuff. So join us at cinemashock.net/plus, and you get a little discount if you do a whole year. You get merch discounts. You get all kinds of perks over there. It's a fun time.
Yeah, come get some.
Come get some. That's our new catchphrase for CinemaShock Plus. Come get some.
Yeah.
Until next time.
May the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
And be excellent to each other.